So much fun at that event, and it was really just wonderful to see how much work you have done for so long to build democratic politics in our Indian American community. I just came from opening the Bernie headquarters for Chicago, and their field director, Pete, is that right, was his name Pete, told me that he was raving about you all, by the way. I said I was coming here, and he said they're doing amazing work, and I think really that kind of organizing within the Indian American community gives me so much hope, because I feel like we are such a powerful community, but we have not really recognized that power in the political sense in the way that we can. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And it is really wonderful to be here. You heard some of my story from Susan. What she didn't say is that I came here by myself when I was 16. And by the way, I was born, because I always get this question with Indian American community, I was born in Madras, but I am a Malayali. My family is from Kerala. My parents live in Bangalore, so those of you who are Kannada, you know, all of our Karnatakas can like that. And I spent 2 years living in UP in the north on a fellowship. And my child was born in Mumbai. So there you go. I represent all of the Indian American community wherever you may have come from. And it really is an honor to be the first South Asian American woman ever elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. If your parents send you across the ocean and use all the money that they have and know that you might never come back to live on the same continent, there are only 3 professions that are allowable. Everybody knows this, right? What are they? Doctor, lawyer, engineer. Exactly. Everybody always gets that. I don't understand. So you can imagine my father's chagrin. I was supposed to be an economics major. I came here to the United States. I went to Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. And I was supposed to be an economics major. And I was only allowed 1 phone call home each year because we just didn't have the money. And there was no Skype back then. I'm dating myself, I know, but there was no Skype back then. So it was the hall phone. And I used my 1 phone call my sophomore year of college to call my father and tell him that I was going to be an English literature major instead of an economics major, after which I had to hold the phone away from my ear as he yelled at me and said, "I didn't send you to the United States to learn how to speak English, you already know how to speak English." And so I did promise my dad that I would get the same job with an English degree that I would have gotten with an economics degree. I went to work on Wall Street for a couple of years and leveraged buyouts in the mid-1980s. And then I ended up coming to Chicago. I got my master's in business at Kellogg in Evanston. Oh my gosh, I was so cold. I was just always so cold. But I did love Chicago. And I got my roots in community organizing in the south side of Chicago when I was at business school, actually. I realized that wasn't really for me, and so I started looking around, and I heard about Saul Alinsky, and I heard about the south side of Chicago and South Shore Bank, and I started to realize, oh, there's another way that I can use my skills for community development and community organizing. And that really was a turning point for me, and so the rest of my life has been spent doing that kind of work that allows me to feel like I can pay forward the opportunity that my parents gave me. And I think so many of us in the room share that feeling of recognizing what a privilege it is to become a United States citizen, and also how we have to contribute and pay it forward. And so that is what IADO is doing every single day, and you know, in helping people to engage in the civic process and the democratic process. So here I am as a Congress member. I was an immigrant rights organizer for 20 years before coming to Congress. I started what is now the largest immigrant advocacy organization in Washington State. We have some of the best immigration policies in the country. We used to fight with ICER sometimes, the Illinois Coalition, because we were siblings in the fight, but we were always like, we did more than you did. We got the first sanctuary city law passed in Seattle. And ICER, of course, has done amazing work, and all of the organizations here working on immigrant rights. We're so grateful to you. But I realized somewhere along the way that people weren't listening to us. People in elected office were not listening to us about what was important to our communities. And I also realized that there weren't a lot of people that looked like me. There weren't any South Asian Americans in our state legislature. There weren't that many Asian Americans, period, in our state legislature. Certainly at the higher levels in Congress, very little of that. So I realized along the way that there were two things that elected officials seemed to listen to. One was money and one was votes. We didn't have any money, so we ended up running the largest voter registration drive in the history of our state, and we registered 23,000 new American citizens to vote. And guess what suddenly happened after that? We were able to get the governor to establish a New Americans Commission. We were able to run a massive citizenship program based in part on the one you run in Illinois. We were able to do a number of things that we hadn't been able to do before. But it still wasn't quite enough. And so in 2014, I realized I was thinking about things completely wrong. That I had been thinking about this as I wanted to be an organizer on the outside. I had been arrested a couple of times for leading civil disobedience actions, on immigration, on other things. I worked on the committee that passed the $15 minimum wage in Seattle. We became the first major city in the country to do that. But I realized, wait a second, what would happen if some of us ran for elected office and got elected and actually started organizing on the inside as well as the outside, using our ability to connect with a different set of communities and bringing our diverse experience to bear? Because it isn't just that representation matters because the pictures look better when we're in them. They do. I mean, just come to the House of Representatives and look at the Republican side and then look at the Democratic side. You will know right away which is which. So it's not just that, it's also that when we come into office as Indian Americans, as immigrants, as women, whatever it is, we bring a very different perspective to bear. The issues that we care about are different, the hearings that we chair are different, the people that we bring to testify before us are different, the stories that we tell are different. And so I ran for the state senate in 2014. I became the only woman of color in the state senate, if you can imagine. And of course, the first South Asian American ever elected to the state legislature. And then, and while that is good, what I was determined to make sure happened is that I wouldn't be the last. And so when I left the state senate, I made sure that I got a Latina elected in my spot, that I endorsed and helped actually recruited, helped endorse and run. And then we now have, in terms of the Indian American community, you won't believe it, we have 4 Indian American women that serve in the state legislature, all of whom saw their opportunity differently because I was there. Had nothing really to do with me, only in the sense that when people look at a body and look at the lack of diversity, it makes it very hard to imagine yourself there. So if your child were to look and see somebody that is South Asian American, it means that they have a different future unfold in front of them. And so that has been a great pride for me. And then, of course, I ran for Congress in 2016. It was a $7.5 million race. I knocked on 120,000 doors, made over 240,000 phone calls, refused to take any corporate PAC money. It was all individual contributions. And I won. And in Congress now, I serve on the House Judiciary Committee, and yes, we did impeach Donald Trump. I also serve on the Education and Labor Committee and on the Budget Committees, and perhaps most important to me is that I'm also the co-chair, the elected co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. And we have about 100 members in the CPC. That's about 40% of the entire Democratic caucus. And we in the Democratic majority, because we won the Democratic majority because we finally paid attention to grassroots organizing, we finally paid attention to our base, we finally turned out people who were so angry at Donald Trump, and we also ran great diverse candidates. We ran people like Ayanna Pressley in Massachusetts. We ran AOC in New York. We ran Ilhan Omar in Minnesota, Jahana Hayes right here in Connecticut, Lauren Underwood in Illinois. These were people who represented different communities and could bring excitement and energy with them as they ran. So we have passed incredible bills in the House of Representatives under the Democratic majority, starting with the getting money out of politics. We've passed, of course, a $15 minimum wage, which when I started working on it, people said, oh, that's so radical, Pramila, that's just too much. And of course, here we are, every single Democrat, almost every single Democrat voted for the $15 minimum wage. We've passed increased ability for labor unions and workers to organize and have workplace democracy. We have passed numerous bills around human rights here in the United States, around our immigration system, and also in other parts of the world, including in my birth country of India. We haven't passed bills there, but we've been taking up these issues in a way that matters for democracies. It matters for how we think about our democratic values. Because it's not enough for us just to be an opposition party against Donald Trump. We have to get Donald Trump out of office, and we will unite around any Democratic candidate that is running against Donald Trump, and we will win the presidency. Getting Donald Trump out is not going to be enough, because Donald Trump is both a symptom and a cause. He exploited the racism, the sexism, all of the different inequalities that are out there in order to get into office. He took what are deep structural inequities, where 3 people in the United States of America, 2 of whom live in my state, have the same wealth as 160 million Americans. And he took that anger from working people that they no longer had the opportunity that I had when I came over at 16 with nothing in my pockets and now have the ability to be a United States Congress member. But that dream is gone for way too many people across the country. And they are angry. And when people are angry because they don't have enough, they look for somebody to blame. And especially if they have a leader who can say, blame immigrants, blame Muslims, blame Mexicans, blame these people that are coming and taking your jobs, that allows for that racism to just expand and grow. And so our work has to be to have a Democratic president who will take on those structural inequities. And hopefully we're able to do that as well. I will continue to fight on all of these issues. I tell people, sometimes people say, well, what's your one issue, Congresswoman? And I say, well, here's the thing. I'm a brown immigrant woman. I don't have the luxury of looking at the world through one lens. I have to care about racism and getting a fair and humane immigration policy in this country. I have to care about women's reproductive rights. I have to care about LGBTQ equality. I have to care about a $15 minimum wage, that working people can use one job, one wage to put food on the table and a roof over their heads. We have to care about all of these things because actually they all matter to us. So I work on all of those issues, and I am so deeply committed to building a more inclusive, more just, more diverse world that recognizes that we as a country don't suffer from scarcity, we suffer from greed. But what always can overturn that is our ability to focus on generosity, on abundance, instead of scarcity and fear. And engaging people the way that IADO does gives us a different future, a way to think about everyone believing that government is the great equalizer of opportunity, and that we Democrats are deeply committed to equalizing opportunity for everyone. So thank you all so much for what you do every single day to build that movement. Thank you for supporting people like me. I hate that we have to run every 2 years. I hate that we have a system that puts money in politics, and I deeply appreciate your support of me, my leadership, and everything I'm trying to do, not only for my district, but for all Americans across the country. Thanks so much.